grade 10s. So you did your death notices, they were really well done, but now it's time to take them to the next level. So you're going to take that death notice, you're working with the same characters, same information, and you're going to turn it into a longer, more extended obituary. Now, I would recommend going back to the death notice video and just going over the differences between a death notice and an obituary. But basically what we're looking at for an obituary, for the longer one, is you're ultimately telling the story of this person's life. Not in detail, right? Don't write me a book, but you want to focus on the highlights of their life. So starting reasonably with their birth. So when were they born? Where were they born? Places of residence. So where did this person live? Did they move around a lot? Born and raised, died in Winnipeg. Born in Winnipeg, moved to Vancouver for school, settled down in Halifax, stuff like that. Their schooling. So this is where you really need to take a look at your character and their identity. So did they leave school after grade 8 to go work on a farm? Did they get a PhD in astrophysics, right? This is going to be a different obituary based on the reality of your character. And then also their career. What did they do for a living? Did they switch careers randomly? Were they a teacher and then they became an astrophysicist? Were they a farmer? Were they a policeman, right? So things like that. And you want to talk about the highlights of their career, you know, did they like it? Did they maybe not like it? So just details about that. Their family. Did they have kids? Were they super close with their cousins? Stuff like that. And then any other noteworthy accomplishments. Did this person find the cure for cancer? Yes. You should probably slide that into the obituary. That's a pretty important fact about a person, right? The obituary is, like I said, you're telling the story of this person's life to people who don't know anything about that person, right? Somebody opens up the newspaper, they see that this person's died, and they're wondering what this person's all about. So you're giving them snapshots into their life. So then what you're also going to want to do is reiterate what you already said in the death notice, right? The fact that this person has died, how they died, who they are, right? So all of those facts should appear again. And then some other family info. If you've read obituaries before, you've probably seen things like, oh, they're joining, like this old man has passed away, he's joining his late wife in heaven, or something to that effect. You can kind of play with the wording there. And then as well as surviving family members, right? Survived by his children and grandchildren and his brother and his cousin, things like that. Because the thing about an obituary is somebody reading it might, you know, they might not necessarily know who this person is, particularly if they're older, but they might look at the names of the children or the grandchildren and say, oh, you know, hey, I went to school with that person. Oh, that's too bad, their father's passed away. So that's why you put that information in, right? You're recognizing the family, you're recognizing the loved ones that are closest to this person. There's no real formula to this, right? Like we discussed with the death notice, you've got like a basic beginning you want to stick with and a basic end you want to stick with, but the middle, how you organize it, is kind of up to you, right? So I'm not saying, okay, first you do this, 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 and then you do this, this, this. That's not necessarily how it goes. You know your character better than I do, right? You've done the research about them, you wrote the thing about them. So you can kind of decide how you want to present the story of this person. As long as you've got this kind of basic information. If they don't have any noteworthy accomplishments, I'm not going to dock you a mark because you don't have noteworthy accomplishments. You're telling the story of this person, right? The best way to kind of get what I'm looking for is by going and reading obituaries. So there's a whole bunch on the Winnipeg Free Press website. I'll put the link to that in my Instagram bio so you can take a look at what other people are writing about their loved ones. And then, yeah, like there's also some examples in the textbook if you want to look at those, but that's how you're going to kind of get the idea of what to write. There is no formula. You're just kind of saying what you truly feel about this person. So even though there is no formula to this, there are some formatting specifics that I want you to keep to. So the first is, a lot of you are asking for the death notice, is this going to be in columns? So if you look at an obituary, it is technically in columns, but it's in column. So it's not a paragraph like you'd see in a book. It's not so wide. It is one column, but you'll notice that it doesn't go column, column, column. If it's a longer obituary, it just goes way longer down the page. So I'm not going to ask you to write like that. You can just write normally like you did for the death notice, but that is something to keep in mind. So don't do 2 columns, basically, is a long-winded way of saying that. Just do it normally, knowing intrinsically that it's one long column. One thing that I do want you to include at the very beginning is a picture. So a lot of you did this for your death notice. I didn't ask for it, but that was awesome. I am asking for it for your obituary. So find a picture of your fictional character and put it right at the top. So next is going to be their name in bold. The best way to get an idea of formatting is if you get a hard copy of the Winnipeg Free Press to your house, they do it perfectly every time. If not, you will still be able to get an idea on the Winnipeg Free Press website, or if you just look up other obituaries. But in bold, under the picture, is the full name, first, middle, last. If your character doesn't have a middle name, you don't need a middle name. Don't worry about it. The other thing is if your character is a woman, if they are married and they change their name, you also want to include their maiden name. Because remember, this is a way that some people might be finding out that this person has died for the first time. So let's say if I'm writing my own obituary, I marry somebody with the last name Smith, but people that I went to high school with, for example, aren't going to know me by Rebecca Smith. They'll know me by Rebecca Lerner. So you put the maiden name down here so that people can recognize the person better. This "né", it's French for born. So this is just the formatting of if you're putting a maiden name, you can do this "né", or you can just do the name. People do it both ways, doesn't really matter. This is just an option. Another thing that people will do is they'll put, for lack of a better term, this person's lifespan. So I was born January 4th, 1996. Let's say I pass away August 2nd, 2071. So then you're just putting the span of my life. Now, if you look at obituaries, you'll notice that some people do this, some people don't. If you don't do this, then this should be in the first sentence or two, in proper sentence wording, obviously, in the actual obituary itself. So you can choose not to do this, but then it has to be right down here so that people know when was this person born, when did they pass away. And then obviously if your character is a man, they probably didn't change their name, so don't worry about that. And then the other thing you want to watch out for with this obituary is the ending. The death notice was a little easier to end because you could just fall back on the funeral arrangements. But an obituary usually comes after the funeral has happened. So you need to get a little bit more creative with how you end it. A lot of people will just, end on a nice sentimental, positive note of, we miss them dearly, we honor their legacy, these are the things that they did that were really great, and this is what carries on. Like I said, okay, well, did this person find the cure for cancer? Your last sentence is probably going to look like, now nobody has cancer. Good job, character. So positive things that you can fall back on there. Some people will actually end it with a poem or a quote, often something religious. If that person led a religious life, then they'll honor that person's tradition. But yeah, so this is going to be the basic formatting. Required for this: picture, name, maybe this format, but definitely this information, and then obviously as well as everything I mentioned in the classroom. So the rubric looks basically the same, just a little bit different weighting. So content is out of 5, just because you're writing more content, I have more to mark. And again, that's just what you actually wrote. Is it good quality? Organization, we're looking at formatting and just the way that things flow. So does your beginning make sense? Does your end make sense? Does the progression of events through their life make sense? Style, again, is that writing style that's appropriate for an obituary. Remember, we're not telling jokes, we're not being crude. This is a somber occasion. And then mechanics, again, is your spelling, your grammar, all that fun stuff. Please let me know if you have questions.